So I joined the business, a little bit about myself first before I pass it on to you guys. I joined the business 2 years ago. I knew Jake and Alex from university days. And I think the most striking thing was, I think I was hire number 20, 22 or 23. And as you heard yesterday, we've got over 120 employees in 4 offices around the world. So we've had, right by the seat of your pants, growth at Tanda in the last 100 weeks. I think we've hired almost 100 people then, if you do that math. So I really wanted to get an opportunity for 2 of the founders as a workforce success conference to really talk about, how do we live workforce success? And I think through that process, try and provide a little bit of insights that potentially those businesses or those members of businesses here in the forum can have as some takeaways. So without further ado then, Alex, besides basically being really the brains of the outfit, if I might be so bold, in building the tech and the floor and the bedroom on the bedroom floor back 6 years ago when it got started. What's probably been your most what surprised you the most from 6 years ago to today, and the growth that you've seen in the business that you've built around you?
That's actually a really good question. I think a lot of things have surprised me. I don't think there's been anything that's been expected, really. Like, business is a journey, and it's an adventure, and you don't really, if you know what's going to happen, it's kind of boring. So I think one of the most surprising things has just been like, we've been just so fortunate to grow such a good team and to have everyone be so excited about coming to work every day, and like obviously to go to work, sort of go the extra effort to do things like putting on this conference. I don't know if surprising is the right word. I'm probably more appreciative than anything else. But we have been very, very fortunate to hire really good people. But I think what's interesting about that is it's not like, every company in the world says that they try to hire the very best. And no doubt everyone does try to do that. But the reality is, like, by definition, not everyone can do that. So I think what's been really fantastic is just seeing so many people who want to step up and just be the best that they can be, regardless of where they come from or what they did beforehand or what their background was. And I found that really inspiring.
No, that's a good answer. And I think I'll touch on a little bit around that step up and the culture piece in a minute. But I'll bring Jake in at this point. I guess, Alex, to bring Jake in, how did you meet Jake?
We were at the bar at QUT.
I'm shocked.
Let's just leave it there.
Jake was wearing a bear suit. Sorry, we should have left it there.
Yeah. All right, Jake. So 120 people, 100 people added in 100 weeks. The CEO of a business that this is your first real kind of professional job outside of university is starting this journey and doing it together. What has been one of the secret formula, or it's obviously we've spoken a lot about the people, but maybe kind of elaborating a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so everyone talks about having a good team, and that's what this conference is about. I think back to the question you just asked, Alex, what's been most surprising for us, and I guess probably the thing people ask us the most is, how have you built a software company without any external investors? So I think along our journey, the thing we've done that's been, I think maybe seemed a little bit crazy at the time, when we first started our business, there wasn't really a venture capital scene in Australia. So we thought, rather than getting financial capital into our business, we would take all that time and all that effort we'd have to do dealing with that and focus on hiring people that were young and were keen and building our human capital inside the business. So I think in terms of that challenge of growing to 100 staff, that's been surprising, and that's been a good journey. I think along that way, the biggest challenge has been making sure we get the right amount of process, and I think over a time and time again, we've probably added too much process into the business, and we sort of find ourselves having to pull that back out to allow us to grow. Because a company like ours, where we've hired 20 people in the last 20-ish days, all the process we had 20 days ago doesn't really work anymore. We have to go back and rethink all that and redo it. So creating an environment where our team is empowered to make good decisions, break the rules, make mistakes, I think is probably the best answer.
No, that's really good. And I think, you mentioned the breaking the rules piece, which I think touches on a talk from Gary's talk yesterday, which I got a lot out of. You've got as you mentioned, there's a fairly young workforce here at Tanda, on the scheme of things. And, you really have kind of encouraged a place where people are both learning, sometimes this is their first professional job. And how have you tried to balance both, an environment where, this is people trying to, do it for the very first time, and also, that freedom to make mistakes?
Yeah, certainly. Well, when I'm interviewing, we obviously look for technical fit, and we look for a good cultural fit, people who are going to get along with the rest of the team. But there's two things that we look for when we bring someone into the team, which I think allows them to succeed in an environment like ours. So the first one being thirst for knowledge. So they have a particular area that they're obsessive about. So they can demonstrate their ability to really learn deeply about a particular topic. So that shows to us when they come into the workplace, if we give them something to learn about, they'll learn about it. And the second thing is curiosity, which is sort of distinct from a thirst for knowledge. These are sort of people who have a wide understanding or a small amount of understanding across a lot of different things. So what that does, it creates this environment inside our business where our people will go out and they'll learn deeply about something. They'll take the best things that they've learned, they'll come back and they'll share that with their co-workers. And co-workers are curious, so they're excited. So it creates an environment where everyone wants to share the things that they're learning.
No, that's really good. I think the other thing that struck me, I'm 29, and I'm the third oldest person in our Brisbane office.
God help you.
Someone told us we should get a CFO with grey hair, so Liam's really working on it.
Yes, and thankfully you're contributing to the cause.
Say last night got you halfway there.
Yeah. So, Alex, I guess you have a team that takes in people from all ages and walks of life, and how have you really fostered a really inclusive team that I'd say you've then broken them up into smaller teams, and we'll talk about smaller teams in a second. But what are those initiatives that you've done that potentially people here in the audience could learn from or implement in their own businesses?
Look, I find these questions really hard to answer because I don't personally think there's like a secret. I don't think we have consciously done a whole bunch of really complicated things to make this work. I think we've just tried to really be ourselves and have and have fun. And I think if you're enjoying what you're doing, and you're enjoying working in the team that you're in, then it's going to resonate, and people are going to want to work with you and want to work really hard because that's what you're doing, and it's having fun. One thing I do consciously do that I sort of started doing about 2 years ago, I'd say, is I really go to a lot of effort to encourage everyone in the team to make fun of me. And I found what that does is it really because when you start a new job, you're always nervous and you're like, oh, I can't piss off the boss or whatever. And that's in my mind, it's obviously silly because we hire people because they're smarter than us. So we want them to tell us how we can improve. But if they're afraid of us, then that's just going to slow things down. So I do all sorts of dumb shit like jumping on stage and things like that and swearing in talks, just to encourage everyone to basically criticize me and have a joke at my expense. And what that does is that it's funny and everyone has a good time. But more importantly, when there's actually something serious to talk about, they're not afraid. And that's really speeds, in some workplaces, that's a 5-year journey of getting enough confidence to criticize someone above you. If we can speed that up to a 5-week or a 5-day process, it makes things much better. So I'd say it's the one thing I consciously try to do. Everything else kind of is just trying to have a good time and be natural and all work towards the same goal.
Absolutely. I'd say that when you do have a team, be it in any business, that's having some issues, they're struggling to get along or struggling to meet the business objectives, and you come in as an outsider and you're trying to solve the problems that team's having, it's impossible. It takes months to peel back the layers of all maybe the personality issues or the subtleties inside that team. And I think one of the things we found is the only way to make sure that those issues are confronted consistently is that the team is comfortable with making fun of their boss, making fun of each other, being candid, and not getting offended when people do things. So Alex sets a great example by being very easy to make fun of.
I try very hard.
So I think we've actually got a session this afternoon about radical candor.
Sorry to spoil it with the best takeaway.
Yeah. I think then, Jake, well, how hands-on are you in the business? Because you mentioned about trying to not just insert yourself into a minute problem if you're not necessarily the person closest to it.
This is a big challenge. I'd say of our 4 founders, I probably have the worst ego. So it's
Agreed.
It's a particular challenge for me. One of the things we've learned over the last couple of years, and I think this applies in absolutely any business, is it is about people. So you've got to develop your people, and you've got to help them step up. Right? That's obvious advice, but for us, we built our office in Brisbane up to sort of 50 people over the last little bit, and we made a real effort to make sure the people we were hiring a few years ago would be ready to step into leadership positions. And it got to the point last year where we were sort of like, what's going to happen when we leave the office? We don't know, we're very uncertain about it, but we have good people, we think it'll be fine. We had last August, we had our first month where all founders were out of the office for a month. Very nervous. It ended up being our best growth month ever. Fantastic. So, okay, good. It's time to get out of the way. So at the beginning of this year, we just decided to get out of the office. I've moved to London, Alex has moved to Texas. Getting out of the way and letting people develop. And over the last 5 months, they've been our best 5 months ever.
I would say Jake is very, very good at this, and I'm very bad. Like, I'm by nature more of a micromanager, and I'm trying very hard to stop doing that, and it's something I'm sort of not very good at yet, whereas Jake sort of leads by example in terms of getting out of everyone's way and generally fucking off. I think that's very, very good. Sorry. Also natural habit.
So I think Jake, when you removed yourself from the business, I think 6 months ago, you obviously had some time to do some thinking and reflecting. And one of the things that came out of that I quite enjoyed, and I think we'll share a link with it around at the end of this session or during the day, and that's the Tanda culture document. And I think it's really tried to articulate, possibly more eloquently than Alex has tried to, what it is what we're trying to achieve and how we go about doing that. So, Jake, maybe a couple of takeaways from that document, or like what really drove the decision to try and articulate that. And I think the most striking thing about it is just how succinct it is. For sure, like it's not a manifesto. It's a couple of pages.
Yeah, sure. So when you come and start working in our business, we have a document. I think it's about 8 pages, maybe 8 to 12 pages, and it has all of our expectations around culture. It has all of our policies and all of our procedures and everything in this document. On the very final page, it says, hey, this is an unusual environment. If you don't like it in your first 2 weeks and you quit, we'll pay you out for 6 weeks. Thank you for not wasting your time. Thank you for not wasting our time. So what we're trying to do is really articulate the things that are important to us and sort of, I guess, unusual. Because a lot of the things, one of the things I found about this document when we wrote it, we sort of showed it to some people in the business and they were like, this is a very painful elaboration of the obvious. And then we showed it to some other people and they were like, whoa, I do not get this. I was not on the same page. So in that we talk about expectations around being able to make fun of each other, around being candid with each other, around being honest, around being able to make purchasing decisions without getting approval from your manager and things like that. So I think that really came from this idea that all businesses that we're aware of that sort of once they get to 100 people, they grow quickly, the culture needs to be purposely managed. So when you're in a business and you're starting it and you're growing it, the culture naturally becomes a reflection of the founders and the early hires in the business. It becomes the average of those people. But when you get to a certain point, that doesn't work anymore. You get to this point where people just can't know everyone, people are in different offices. You have to write it down, you have to articulate it.
Yeah, I think it's when you move from everyone being able to have lunch together to that just not being practical anymore that things really changed a lot for us. And we've had to force ourselves to create and document what it's like for everyone to have lunch together so that it can keep maintaining that vibe even as things obviously as spread apart. I think I should reiterate, the document that Jake wrote is definitely less than 8 pages and it has every single rule in the business. Like if you want to know how much you're allowed to spend on travel, it is in this document, as well as if you want to know how much you're allowed to make fun of me. It's like a very, very comprehensive thing and it's very, very short. I think we should definitely share it around.
We're happy to share that too.
Yeah, you guys should all use it. Not the same rules, obviously. Your own version.
So, but before I came back into Tanda, my previous employer was BHP, which is a wonderful business, but it's an industrial era company. Like it started in the early 1900s in Broken Hill, and the sheer inertia of policies and procedures, and yes, they do dangerous work, so obviously safety is important, but the welcome pack was a tome, and somewhere in there was the health and safety procedures, which are important. But then just the culture documents were, I think you had to listen to videos for an entire day with your headphones on, which most people do while looking at their phone. And to have that condensed down to a couple of pages was pretty striking for me coming into Tanda.
Yeah, just to give you an example, like we had a few issues a while ago just trying to make sure we got all our expenses in on time and everything. So somewhere in the business, someone sprung up, had a good idea over the last 5 years to create an expenses policy. So, taking example from Netflix, we just got rid of our expenses policy, and now our expenses policy is act in the best interest of Tanda. That's it. And, we've never...
keep your receipts.
Keep your receipts.
Please hand to people in the audience.
But no, and we've never had a problem with it. It's pretty, everyone is very, everyone wants to do the right thing by the business, everyone wants to be successful, so that's fine.
Explain to people that not keeping your receipts really results in everything being 10% more expensive. Was the best way of explaining this to anyone? Would you say receipt keeping works now?
It has improved by almost all of the founders.
Sorry. I'm definitely the worst at that.
It definitely gave me pause. I'd also worked at CBA, and to come in and see an employee expense policy that's a single line and it says, act in the best interest of Tanda. If you're spending less than $1,000, do it. If it's more than $1,000, have a conversation with your manager. That's it. So I think that's putting my CFO hat on, terrifying. But for the culture that it's developed and I think the sense of empowerment that it gives employees is second to none that I've seen in any business that I've come across. So a question from the audience. It's around training, and I think it's a really good one because this one's from Jade. With such a rapid expansion and so many people coming in, there's obviously a logistical challenge around just making sure that the training is as effective as possible. Do you mind touching on a little bit around, Alex, for you and your team, what you do to make sure that training's effective? But then, Jake, I might pivot to you and talk about how then do you keep the culture and everything that you've worked hard to do and transplanting that as we have now 4 offices around the world.
I'll caveat my answer by saying that I think my team doesn't do training very well, and I think Jake's team does it very well. Or Jake's part of the business does it much better than us, so I'm trying to copy them. But I think one of the things that we really try to do is, we do a lot of internships and try to start people in batches a lot, which kind of it makes the process a bit simpler because you're not repeating yourself so much. Within product, it's kind of a mixture of technical training, so learning how the code base works and learning how to build on top of it, learning the design standards, and more business training, so learning what Tanda actually is and who our customers are and stuff like that. One thing that we do, so the technical training, I won't go into the details too much, but on the other side of things, one thing that we do that I think does work quite well is we encourage everyone within their first, ideally in their first week, to spend a week on the phones answering support calls and just talking to lots of customers. So if you've ever called our office, you've possibly talked to someone on their first day. So sorry in advance. But I think what that learns is, if nothing else, it teaches you humility to be I don't know, but I'll find out for you. And it teaches you to find things out really fast. I think being, A, understanding what you don't know, and B, being able to find answers to things quickly rather than fobbing off to someone else are the most useful skills in any business, I think. So it kind of very quickly forces people to think in that sort of way and to be very resourceful. So when I say we don't do training well, things I'm not happy about are we don't have a very good structure around it. We don't really have we don't give people enough an understanding of how quickly they should be learning. And there's things like that we can easily improve, I think. But I think the things we do well is we get people used to the idea of being very resourceful and very able to answer their own questions very quickly. And obviously to also teach them where they can get help and who is there to help them, which is everyone.
I believe we've also tried to transition more towards batch training as we can.
So doing it with 5 people starting on the same day is much easier than 1 person each day of the week.
Yeah.
But that's more of a process thing than an actual strategy.
I think Alex is being a bit harsh on himself because Alex's team builds software better and faster than any other software company I've ever come across. So they're right on the very cutting edge of all the new technology. So it's not like you can really go out and get the right training. So it is something we're creating from scratch. But I think one of the key lesson you've got to learn as a business owner early on is your employees will make mistakes and they will be costly. But the cost of them making the mistake is less than them learning. So the way we deal with training is we give people a rough idea how to do it, and then we get them started first day straight away. They make mistakes, it's fine.
I think that goes back to the culture thing as well. Like, I've made so many more mistakes than everyone else at Tanda. And I think as long as everyone else knows that, not because I've been around longer, just like the mistake per day rate is higher. So as long as everyone is aware of that and comfortable calling that out, then it's like, it should be really easy to also accept that they'll make mistakes and they'll learn from them. And ideally the mistakes aren't not too costly, but we do what we can to, like, it's my job to create systems to prevent that. And whether that is like ensuring the site's online or ensuring that the software is working correctly. It's on your first day, you're not expected to be able to know all this stuff, but it's our job as a team to ensure that you are protected from screwing the customer over, but are also encouraged to go and be a bit volatile and figure out how the best way to do things is. Just find the right balance between the two. Keeping the mistakes per day rate moderate.
That's good answers. Well, so then, Jake, how then have we tried to bottle what we've got and then make sure it's repeatable as we've opened up, an office in LA with 5 or 6 staff there, an office in the UK, and obviously the larger office in Manila as well?
Well, people in different countries have subtleties, obviously, but I think the culture doc we were talking about before is certainly the foundation of that. One of the things we've really had to do is make sure we move people between offices, to make sure people know each other, because it's all very good and very nice to have these aspirations, this process about how you do things as a business, but business and life is people and relationships. So getting people and relationships developing in your business is really the only way to keep things consistent, I think.
So practical example, our UK office, one of the people who was like working in our customer success team in Australia, we were like, do you want to move to the UK? And he was like, okay, cool. And that was Bryce, who you saw on Tasman slides yesterday, and now he runs the UK office. And that, obviously, had a lot of technical ability and knowledge of the business and so forth. But it also meant that the culture was right from day one, because it wasn't like going over there and hiring this new person and trying to teach them how we work. It was this guy just got it from the start. And his job was just to go and try to find customers and make it all worth doing. So it was kind of a head start in that sense, and that worked really well.
Nice, yeah. I think definitely the travel budget's gone up because of it, but definitely the
whatever.
Yeah, the taking of the best of us and transplanting that to make sure that the connectivity is good has definitely been really positive. I think for anyone here who's visited our offices, we've got at all times a video up on the screen of our international offices whenever they're up and awake, and people can just walk up to it and have a conversation. So I think we've really tried to utilize technology to break down those barriers, because it's a bigger and bigger business, and as Alex said, it's harder to have everybody around the same lunch table every day now. So to try and to keep that connectivity up and then obviously the culture on the same page.
It's also just really hard. Like being in the UK office when there's 4 people there in a small room, like it's not the same. It's not like being in Brisbane where there's a lot of people around and everyone's very talkative. So it's good to sort of narrow those barriers and make people do feel like they are part of the team, as opposed to just being this like little offshoot. Because it's not an offshoot; it's a really big strategic thing. Yep. But it's just so early days that it may not feel like that all the time, and we want it to feel like that all the time.
So I'm going to take a question that's apparently been voted up, which I didn't know we could do in the app.
Oh, that's cool.
Thanks, Rod. And it's around, I guess, how we managed to do this type of growth and the staff ratio without putting the company under financial pressure is the direct question. So, Jake,
did you write this question?
I did not write this question, but I will be taking notes. So, Jake, would you mind maybe talking a little bit around that? I think our budget percentage of revenue approach has definitely been one of those key drivers.
Yeah, so we grow quickly, and we don't want to get in a cycle where we're regularly reviewing the budget in dollar terms to think about, okay, last month it was $100, this month it needs to be $120. So we sort of, as a governance tool, we meet as a board. I think our chairman's around somewhere, John Puddick. He introduced this concept to us, and what we do is we set a percentage. So we say, okay, we want to spend 22% on research and development, 15% on overheads, office, things like that, this much on sales, this much on marketing. That sort of scales up with the business, and we review that every quarter. In terms of not putting the business under financial pressure, it's a good question. I think it does come down to people, right? So if we were continuously trying to go out and hire people at a senior level as we're growing this quickly and bring them in at a cost, they'd be costly, and expect them to take 6 to 12 months to understand our business so they could have a big impact, the biggest impact they could have, we wouldn't be able to afford to do that. But what we can do is we can hire young, keen, excited people, fresh out of high school, fresh out of university, who want to learn, have those 2 traits we spoke about before, curiosity and a thirst for knowledge, and build up their skills over time. So when it comes time to fill a role like CFO, we have someone in the business who understands how our sales cycles work, and things like that. They can come in and add a lot of value very
Someone
quickly.
who's made some sales themselves and gets the whole point of it and seen the whole customer life cycle. Makes it a lot easier to then tell everyone else how to do it and to put a cost around it. So I think that context is really important.
Yeah, well, it's still early days, so we'll see how we go. But
I will add one more thing there just quickly on the financial pressure particular part of the quote. I love that statement because it just makes it sound so bad. But I think that's what, I think certainly for the type of business we have, we're trying to double in size every year. If there wasn't financial pressure, something wouldn't be right. So I would argue that financial pressure, creating that vacuum where you want to be figuring out where the next dollar comes from is what creates the urgency that we have to grow quickly but also scalably and sustainably. And if there was no pressure, then what would the point be? So I disagree with the question.
all right, where pressure makes a diamond, they say.
Yeah, and it's true. Both in the literal and metaphorical sense.
Yeah, I used to work for a mining company. Yeah. So I guess we're running out of time, and of course there's a couple of cliche questions to probably ask while we've got you. And thank you to those who've been asking. One is, look,
You're also criticizing questions now.
No. If you guys could give yourselves one piece of advice, or that one give bit of information in this workforce success space now that you wish you'd had when you'd started, what would that be, and potentially as a nice takeaway to possibly end on.
I think if we were going back and starting again, there'd be 2 things to do differently. One, I'd love to put the office on the Gold Coast because it's so cool down here.
Is the mayor here?
Yeah. Secondly, I think we have made that mistake of adding too much process into our business. We have done that at different stages, and it's very easy when you're building a business, any kind of business. Someone will come and they will tell you about the risks. So you got to have a really long workplace health and safety policy. You got to do this. You got to do that. Yes, those things are risks, but often those people are just trying to sell you something. They're trying to sell you legal services or something. So, we've been down that path, and eventually this process that we put in to try and allow us to scale just got in the way, and it just kept happening again and again and again and again. So, recently we've just taken the idea of just pulling all that stuff out, relying on common sense, and hiring sort of fully formed humans who have the interests of your business in mind. And key to that is the most key thing, is making sure that the interests of your team are the same interests as your business while they're at work. And when you do that, all those problems disappear and go away.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I think so one thing that we used to do pretty badly is, I'm going to turn the question back on you. What should we do better? And the reason I asked that, while you can think about an answer, is because I think if you asked me 2 years ago, I'd probably have a really well-formed answer of here's all the stuff we did wrong. But I think what I've learned recently, or has become much more obvious, is that we aren't, there's 100 people at Tanda. The fact that I'm not the best person to answer all these sorts of questions. It's just a very arbitrary position that I've ended up in. So I think that I would much rather hear what you would have me change.
That's artfully done, Alex.
So I think
But I'm serious.
No. So my answer would be this: at the conclusion of this afternoon, tomorrow and Sunday, besides I assume sobering up, we've got not only the 4 founders, but each of the key leaders and team leaders of the business, and those who have been present in a number of those key challenges that we're trying to address. As we grow, and they're all getting together over the course of a weekend to facilitate answers to those challenges. And I think that's definitely something I think that has evolved more recently than not, where previously it was just the 4 founders. I mean, you guys knew each other so well, you finished each other's... No, okay, fine. And
Sentences?
Yep. I was going to say sandwiches. But the...
have that much food.
That transition of being able to step back and then let others step up. And now, as you pointed out, Jake, you're now removed from some of the detail, and to have both at the same time the helicopter view of strategy, but then the detail being filled in by those key people at the same time in a key couple of sessions and answering those key strategies, I think is definitely one of the most probably one of the things that I think we're lucky we're just at that right size with 120 people that we can do it in the right way, versus some of the larger businesses that I've been in, and it's just like it's a survey form you fill out once a year and it takes 5 minutes and you're kind of pretty sure no one ever reads it.
Yeah, I would say that I feel like the thing I've gotten best at over the last few years is I've learned to listen a lot better than I used to be. I think there's a long way to go still, but I think we've sort of been dragged there by necessity, but I think that we have gotten better at listening. And listening that doesn't just mean listening to everything that someone says and unconditionally doing it, listening and then filtering out what is the right thing to do. It kind of goes back to the bureaucracy point as well. And like listening and actually taking on the right feedback and doing the right things because of it.
That's right. So on that listening thing, Alex, I'd say, like in any business, anything that's happening at the front line, those employees at the front line are going to make better decisions. If I walk through the office and someone says, "Hey Jake, I got a question about a support issue that a client's having, can you help me answer?" I'm like, you are going to do a far better job than I am. You understand the context far better than I do. That translates to any business. If you're making pizzas, if you're making sandwiches, whatever it is, you're going to understand what the customer wants and what they want a lot better than someone who's not doing that is. So, I think the thing that we've learned over the last couple of years is to listen and build that conduit and let people feedback. We're productizing that at the moment.
We're building shift feedback. It's going to be really good. You guys should all use it.
Okay, well, it wouldn't be against habit to chew up the last minute with another question, and I think it's a good one, and it's from one of your employees, Alex. So the question from Brooke is, how do you draw the line between people making fun of you and respect? Because it's a good one. Because there are people out here, and you go, all right, I'm happy for my employees to make fun of me, but I don't think people are going to go and dress up in a clown costume and rock up to work the next day and think that they're going to improve office culture.
No, and I think I think dressing up in a clown costume does not improve office culture at all. I think, in my mind, good question, Brooke. In my mind, respect doesn't come from like the position you're in or who you are. It comes from what you do. So to answer your question, like I go and like encourage people to tell jokes, and whatever. But then I also try to be the hardest working person on the team, and I sort of challenge everyone else to work harder and to be more successful. And so I think that hopefully I don't really care if that creates respect or not. But when I have an opinion on something, I try to justify and explain why I think this is how we should do it, and then challenge someone to prove me wrong. And often they do. So to me, the two I don't think the two go hand in hand. I don't think the two are really that related. The joking around bit is much more about encouraging people to criticize you, so that when there is a decision that needs to be made, people are happy and confident to go and be like, "That's stupid. This is how we should do it, and here's why." And I think that whoever that comes from will get respect if their answer is the best. And if their answer is not the best and someone else has a better answer, then I would hope that they would also respect that and to be like, "Okay, no, you're wrong. Let's do it that way. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Let's do it that way." So. Yeah, I don't know if that sort of answers the question.
Thanks, Alex. Well, here's some feedback. I think we should probably get a wriggle on and possibly a better moderator for the next session.
I think you've done a really good job.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Guys,
I really do.
Thanks very much for your questions. And as I said, we'll share that link around to the culture document after that.
Please tell us what you think of it, because it's very new to us as well.
100%. And look, this is our first workforce success conference, so feedback generally is always welcome as well. So, look, with that, appreciate Alex and you guys' candor.
Jake.
And Jake. So,
Jake.
I was going to say, we missed Tasman, but we left a chair here in his memory. So,
no one knows where he is.
Guys, just a quick round of applause for I think these guys and.